Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for folks joining us across the world. I'm really excited to welcome everyone to our LinkedIn Live on building effective product management teams in a talent constrained market. This is, and I think a topic which is very close to my heart, and we've been doing some amazing research, and I have a great panel with me to also talk about it. So as we do introductions of our panel out here, it would be really lovely to also understand where are all our participants joining us from. So why don't you do a shout out in the comments and tell us where are you tuning from, and then in the meanwhile we will do the introductions of our panelists today. So Dan, I'll go to you first. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us why the topic of building effective product management teams is important, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Diana Jouard. I'm a product manager for Ping Identity, and my focus at Ping is integrations and also developer experience and how our integrations are represented inside of a marketplace. Um, yeah, the reason why this topic is really interesting to me is because there's no one path to product management, and many product managers that are operating in the world today um, were homegrown at a particular company and kind of cut their teeth through sales or engineering or data analytics, and as a general topic of why product management is important for a company, it really comes down to representing the customer voice and being an advocate for the customer, and also anticipating their needs and noticing market trends before maybe the customer is able to articulate it.
Okay, thank you, Naina. Rohit, over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us why this topic is exciting for you? What are you doing out here?
Hey, thanks, Ronak, and thanks for having me, Diana. Very happy to join you today. I manage the GBS focused research within Everest Group. So we are working the GBS organization or the in-house captive organizations, kind of in their setup and evolution journeys, and where they are after 2 decades of maturity is that they house a large portion of global technology operations, corporate functions, but the focus has largely been on services delivery, moving forward from there on solutions delivery. As the global businesses pivot towards becoming more focused on product management, targeted product evolution, bringing more agility into how they deal with it, right, and then creating different kind of organization and governance models for that, there is a very important implication for the entire GBS world, and that's something that we have been working with our clients for over the last few years, and it's still the beginning. They are starting to feel the need to change. Some of them have made some strides, but that's a constant area of interest and a challenge that they are all looking to face. So always interested in the topic, and once again, thanks for having me here, Ronak.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Diana. And again, I see comments pouring in. So we have Ricky joining us from rainy London and Syed joining us from Delhi. So again, thank you everybody for dialing in, and do tell us where are you tuning in today, and talking to us about. And I wanted to start the discussion today. The topic we chose, right? And we definitely wanted to highlight that this is a talent constrained market. Product management as an area is evolving, is growing really fast, and it's not just the traditional technology companies who are now moving towards a product management based organization, but across industries, everybody is moving to a product based organization. I have financial services firms who are now branding themselves as a technology enabled bank and becoming a fintech and saying we want to understand and organize ourselves around our customers, and we believe products and the experiences that we build is how we want to organize ourselves. So starting to see this interesting journey towards customers at the center of it, and then product teams driving this. So this is changing organization structure. This is changing talent models and several other pieces to it. So I thought it would be important, right? So folks who are joining us in today, feel free to share, in the comment channel, what are the challenges and the constraints that you see in building effective product management teams. And as you pour in your comments and share your concerns around the challenges that you see in building and scaling effective product management teams, then I'll come to you and hear from you, right? In your experience, what are these challenges that you see that companies face as they build and scale the product management teams?
Yeah, I think that, so I've got two answers for that. One is acquiring and growing the right talent. So product management is a very, hot and well-desired role. And you can go look and find a bunch of different boot camps and courses out there for aspiring PMs. And most of there's kind of this gate that a lot of companies self-impose of, we want an experienced product manager that has between 3 to 5 years of experience, also might need to have industry level experience. And really what I would encourage managers out there to, self-reflect on is growing their product team from within. Because in some sense, those gates are self-imposed, and there is no clear path to product management. Like I was saying earlier, and depending on the company, every PM organization has a different flavor. At Ping, because we're an infrastructure and security company that's highly technical, our flavor is very engineering heavy, where kind of the original core of product managers grew up through that organization. But that might look really different for another company where more PMs are being grown through customer success or sales. And really, yeah, I would just encourage managers to look at their own pool of talent, because there's plenty of people that would love to grow their career in that direction and get the exposure that's needed to become a fantastic PMs. And so really it's about creating a pathway and a model for mentorship and also like career expansion through a horizontal move and then up through product management that can bloom a really fantastic team of product managers. So that kind of brings me to my second point, which is that depending on the size of your company, you might have a very flat PM model where you have just kind of your generic product managers. You don't have a group product manager or a PO structure, and that it can be really easy for organizations to sit in that kind of comfortable flat architecture for the PM org, but that as product portfolios scale, that model doesn't continue to serve organizations. So finding that right level of breaking down a product into component pieces and assigning responsibility is really key to the success of a team.
Thanks, Diana, for sharing this. And Rohit, coming to you on the same question, right? You have a perspectives on global organizations who are leveraging their GBS teams and housing their product management organizations into these GBS organizations and working on a global scale. I think their complexity increases furthermore. What are the challenges that you see, these organizations face as they are building and scaling, right, their product management teams?
Yeah, and let me start by just echoing what Diana said. I think that resonates a lot, even in the GBS model. So, one, everybody is looking for talent which has done that, is project ready, but that does not necessarily exist in the right volumes, in the right locations. So, again, creating that gate for themselves. I love the way you articulated that, Diana. Uh, what we have seen, and let me just start from there, is the challenge we have seen is that organizations are not really democratizing the learning modules for grooming product managers, right? They're boxing it up that we'll have this dedicated team do this kind of work, and then we'll groom them to become, better at it, but not really tapping into the other talent. Completely agree with that. In fact, one of the challenges in career pathing is also that, particularly in the GBS model, there are there is a bit of a confusion and very different types of roles that exist, which are labeled as product management, but they're not always necessarily product management. Some of them are more project management roles, getting kind of disguised as product management. So there is a bit of a conflict on what that role is. If you look at their skills requirement, their job descriptions, their career opportunities where they can be in a few years, that kind of starts to become restricted, and that creates a challenge of bringing in the best of the talent into those roles as well. So one is entire, career pathing and where you are looking to source, but there are two other big challenges that we have seen, particularly in the GBS model. One, by design, historically, this model has been built on scaling capabilities for execution of tasks and transactions. Even when we started maturing IT, which is pretty large, a lot of it was driven by execution that slowly it became more strategic, right? Today it is fairly strategic. But as we look at that, the business context has been a gap area. Many of these sites are located in countries where the core business does not operate. So there are employees who are very good within their function, very good at executing what they do, but have a gap in understanding what the client is really thinking, what the business model is changing into. And gap of that understanding is creating a problem in building the right sort of product management talent, because it needs to be more business centric, be more customer centric, right? That's one other challenge. And the last point I'll make is the model itself, right? The way GBS organizations or the entire, what GIC as we call them in locations like India or Philippines, etc., they were built on consolidating, teams from across regions, across businesses, across product teams and functions, right? But by design, for the product management teams to be more effective, again, there are all sorts of models with different levels of centralization. And Ronak, would love to hear from you. I know you have done a lot of work in those
Yeah.
models. But while there are many models, the GBS model was building on consolidating work. And by design, the product management teams need some sort of more vertical alignment, pod structure to be
Yeah.
more agile, to be more focused. So there is that readjustment in the organization structure that is required. And that is a fundamental shift, right? More than the organization, the mindset shift on how we operate that GBS organizations are struggling with, which also limits their ability or makes it more difficult to build the product management teams.
I think Rohit echo all of these points, and again, thanks for kind of structuring this way. And I would add to this, right? Because a couple of things that I have seen, which kind of left me at a big, I think started a kind of stark realization was product management in a lot of organizations have been done in very silos, right? Because a lot of companies, specifically the non-tech organizations, they have been doing product in a very silo manner. But if you look at their IT functions, as you said, right, their other process like HR and finance and others, all of them surrounding even the contact center and CRM and other processes are surrounding them but are not organize them. So one of the things we are seeing is this change in the challenge being in changing the entire organization ethos. So moving IT as a enabling function to IT becoming a product-led IT organization. I think doing that is a hard thing, right? Because what you're now saying is how can IT support the engineering teams, the product design teams, the product management team, all of them to align with their objectives, which is basically the objectives to serve customers better, to create better experiences, to create better processes. I think that becomes a challenge. The second is this organizational, just staying to the topic of organizational structure challenges. How are you creating the structure, right? So as you said, right, these are their centralization model. There is a hierarchical pyramid kind of a model, and we've seen a cross-functional team kind of model. all of these have existed for a long time, but then what happens is each of them are being measured, governed with very different objectives, while the product management teams are getting, governed and measured and even incentivized on very different objectives.
Mhm.
Because if you, I think one of the things we've realized is in the age of more digital platforms, the speed at which you are building products, designing products, and updating products is the speed at which you are driving velocity of growth of the organization. So the entire organization being surrounded towards that goal becomes even more critical. And I think that's a huge change management project, right? We are working with clients who have, product teams that are spread across 30, 35 different locations. There are cultural nuances, there are localization challenges that they face. How do they bring all of that together and then make them work in a cohesive manner become? So I think the scaling bit is becoming the bigger challenge as we see it. It is good in silos, but as it happens in a scale environment is where we are starting to see this breakdown. And once the product boundaries start collapsing in each other, I think that even becomes even challenging is how you're serving the same customers with different products and these boundaries are collapsing. And again, I can take a banking example. There's an auto lending product and there is a mortgage product, but what's happening is these are all based on similar lifestyle events. You want to capture those lifestyle events and generate certain experiences. You're not able to do that really well because both of these are getting designed separately. How do you bring them together becomes important. So I think some of those are definitely challenges that we've seen. I know, Rohit, you are smiling, so why
No,
don't
so
you
I'll
comment
tell
on
you why
this? Yeah.
I'll tell you why I'm smiling is while you are talking about all of that, and I'm listening intently. Where you're talking about, you're also touching how big a change management exercise that is, right? And just yesterday, about the same time, I was with a very great, panel, and we were talking about change management in organizations. And we recently did a study, right? We'll not pivot too much into that, but we studied what are believed to be some of the largest organizations in the world, right? We studied about 60 of them, and the results were very disappointing, right? And not just for product management only, but generally what we see is that change management is an area which is underinvested, underappreciated. So it just adds to that problem, that while we are talking about all the product management specific aspects, as organizations have to go through this another wave of change or additional wave of change in addition to what else is happening, they are not prepared for that kind of change management, right?
Yeah.
But pivoting back, I'll also emphasize on another great point you mentioned, Ronak, is in incentivizing. That is another problem. The way teams are incentivized right now, what their metrics are, they need to change in alignment with the product management model of, or ways of working. If the some parts of the team are incentivized differently and you need to operate them differently, then there is a disconnect,
Yeah.
right? You cannot expect them to deliver, because they'll deliver at the end of the day what they are measured on. And if that's not aligned to the goals of a product centric organization, then it won't work.
Yeah. And any reflections on this conversation? How do you see this playing out in terms of change management and the challenges around, scaling these teams?
Yeah, I mean, what both of you have been talking about resonates for sure. And at Ping, it's also something that we're working through right now, making sure that our sales organization and engineering and product marketing organizations are all set on the same goals and initiatives, and also making sure that we have transparency throughout our organizations, to roll up all of these different organizations, with our OKRs that we're setting at each organizational level, to the total company goals. So, I mean, an example that I'll give is that, like Ping has a very enterprise customer set. We go after the Fortune 300, and our product design and the direction of our company reflects that, and making sure that the tooling, the trial experience, the also the sales that we're biting at, are reflective of that general, that general definition of who we're pursuant of.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I do want to talk about the talent piece also because I think that's my favorite topic out here, right? So Before I kind of come to Diana, Rohit, and both of you, I also want to talk to our participants who have joined us, to ask them, right, what have been their experience. If you can share it with us in the chat window, what are these skills that you believe are very critical and also in a way hard to find in building and scaling these product management team. We would love to hear from all of you. And again, Rohit, let me first come to you on this, right? Which is, what do you see? Because one of the research that we've done in this space is, if you look at the demand supply gap for product managers as an area, and we were doing the skill mapping, it's almost, the demand supply gap was 30 to 33% as a high, right? So basically, one of the things we're saying is there's a high demand for product managers, but the supplies gap is very limited. And Dinah made a very interesting point. It's not just a horizontal scale. You also need to understand the domain and area. So you're vertically integrated. So how do you bring the two things together? So and if you apply those two constructs, the demand supply gap suddenly shoots up for some specific areas, like, and again, within even cybersecurity as an area, we've seen overall the demand supply gap for cybersecurity engineers is higher, and now we are adding a layer of product management skills. That pool even becomes smaller and more exclusive to hire in the market. So I think, Rohit, from your perspective, what do you see, right, are the hard to find skills and talent as an area from a product management perspective?
And Ronak, I see a couple of different questions in there, right? So one
Yeah.
is general observations on the talent market situation from a product management team perspective, right? Second, some of the hard to find skills, and third, probably some things see companies are doing to kind of bridge that gap, right? So if I start with the first one, right, the some of the key gap areas that we see right now, and or just observations, I think in last 2 years, we saw a significant spike in demand for this kind of talent. Unfortunately, Diane, while you said that there is an integration of that domain, we still see everybody going after the same generic definition. So a lot of the product design engineers, product design managers, data product managers. We see a lot of demand for localization process management, right? The Again, when product management very quickly, then team expands into requiring agile, scrum, other skills. Some of those skills we see relatively becoming more available again, because in the last 5 years we have seen many significant investments in that area. But some of the core product roles still in demand. And what has happened is, uh, everybody finds that to be a fancy, futuristic role, right? So we see a lot of talent pool which has done something remotely associated with this, trying to jump into the bandwagon, right? But organizations in the spree even hiring some of that talent, but not willing to invest. So what we see is 3, 6, 9 months, talent not delivering, organizations not investing, people moving on. So there has been a lot of loss of productivity and efficiency in the market that we see, right? Uh, Coming to we spoke about some of the skills or some of the roles that are more in demand, right? Yes, organizations try to find talent with relevant domain, but again, that's even more scarce. So they are settling, but still not finding even the right role, right? What we have seen starting to happen is organizations trying to go where there is a lot of a startup ecosystem, because as Diana said, earlier, a lot of organizations that have grown in a particular with a different mindset have accelerated development of these kind of skills. So we have seen organizations try to explore India's startup ecosystem, move to Singapore, Baltics within Europe. London is a big market. Israel is as a market that many have explored, right? Of course, in US there are pockets of markets, right? Toronto is increasingly becoming interesting. So one of the things we have also seen is organizations looking beyond where their other teams are to kind of try and find this. The only challenge is that they are also struggling to find the right balance in the proximity, what works and what is too far. So, do we need these people in business geography? Are we okay keeping them in the other geography? So, those are some other challenges that we see organizations continuing to struggle with. But definitely, to summarize, I think some of the roles, some of the core product roles, whether it is design, management, data, These are the ones where we see most demand and most scarcity. Looking into more locations, but I'll come back again. You made a great point in the beginning, Diana, that are how many of these gates are self-created. So is the best way to look inwards, especially for large organizations, who have a lot of talent pool to kind of train on these roles.
No, no, thank you, for sharing your perspective. Diana, coming to you, right? Again, same question. What in your world, what are the skills and talent are hard to find, and how are you building those in your organizations?
Yeah. So I would say the two things that come to mind for this question are also the ones that are most difficult to train, or to get even from an MBA, which is one, somebody who has a strong vision. Product managers have been likened to many CEOs because you are the business owner and you are the one responsible for the totality of a given product. And you're working across many different teams to collectively make a product succeed. And I think that somebody who has vision is able to, like, I'm going to use a term that I think Steve Jobs coined, which is to like create this reality distortion field. Yeah. And like, that's something that's very special, and difficult to find, to be honest, in product managers, where I think, we all can kind of get bogged down in some of the routines of listening to customer feedback and then taking that and implementing it, and not also kind of looking farther out, looking at market trends, and seeing farther for the vision of a particular product. What I see also in contrast sometimes to that is I've worked with PMs that have incredible charisma, vision for a product, and really can kind of excite and draw people to their cause, but don't necessarily have the ability to execute, and have the ability to drive that vision forward. And, with any point in your career, there's times where things get really difficult, and you get like stuck in the muck, and being able to kind of cut through the bullshit and do that also on behalf of your team and teams that you're working with, is also a very special talent that's hard to grow. It's hard to learn. So I would say like those two things really extend across industry and also company size. Whereas like, we could get specific about like clear writing always helps, and writing requirements, having a technical background, like those things never hurt. But I would say that, yeah, like vision and also execution are probably the most important things to me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So there's like a mindset piece, there is a technical skills piece, and then there is a other softer aspects of your personality in terms of writing skills, design skills, and others that kind of start coming in, right? So it's a merger of these three, which makes product management coming to life, and then being able to kind of create that distorted illusion of reality. I think I like that term. I'm going to use that also often. So I think bringing that together, and it's, as you said, it's harder to bring all of these three things together, I think, and finding these people at scale. So that's true. And what I wanted to also do is acknowledge some of the comments that are coming in. And Rodrigo, thank you for your comment. And there are two interesting comments which also helps us to lead to our next section that I wanted to do, which was, one is around GBS organizations, right? They're still, and I think Rohit, you made this point, and we've got this comment, right, which are still structured by technologies as opposed to business functions or as platforms, right? Cross technology. I think this needs to change. So definitely there's an element of how do I create collaboration in the organization between these different functions is a big topic, and we wanted to cover that. And the second aspect also, there's another comment which came in, which was IT team needs to move from a project mindset to a product mindset, which is also a change in shift in mindset that we just spoke about. But then it's about how do we not just build technology skills, but infuse technology and business and product management capability. It's about bringing all of these things together. So I think both these comments are very relevant to this, because it's a sense of, okay, you're building a different talent model, talent pool, and an organization structure, and there is a bit of an IT operations, business, and product management coming together. And how do you drive this collaboration? So I do want to talk about collaboration, because I do believe, as we think of product management, one of the key things that happens is about collaboration between teams, specifically when they are distributed geographically, or they're distributed across businesses, product teams. So Diana, coming to you, right? What do you see as the element of collaboration, how important it is, and how do you drive that in the organization? How do you steer the folks in the teams to kind of drive this culture of collaboration?
Yeah, this one's tough because so software products are kind of architected to resemble the structure of organization in which they're designed. Yeah. So, and I've certainly seen this at Ping and other companies that I've worked at. So if you are kind of building your organization around time zones as opposed to the way that the products work together, you end up with a very siloed product. And so if you really are kind of designing your team with that in mind, you might be spanning many time zones. And to that, I mean, what I've found most successful with working with, teams in India, or I work currently with teams in Tel Aviv frequently, is that, stand-ups aren't really an option. But carving out a consistent weekly meeting is like, invaluable in the kind of progress that you can make together. And I mean, this isn't a surprise to anybody, but having in-person time can also just really accelerate innovation. And whether that's on a quarterly basis, or maybe even once a year, or maybe it's ideally it's for one-off kind of summits where you're swarming around a product kickoff or swarming around a new initiative. And that can really just lay a beautiful foundation from a team building perspective, and also just getting on the same page and ideating together, where it's never going to replace like Zoom or asynchronous communication will never replace that. So I think it's really important to invest at the right time in those on-site moments.
No, I think that's a very good point. Rohit, from your perspective, right, globally distributed teams coming together, product management, how do you drive this collaboration?
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental challenges, I'll go back to that structural issue, is that the way the model evolved, especially with a lot of globally distributed teams, is by creating some divisions, creating some boundaries, putting some teams in one place and saying they stand for this, they will deliver this to other part of the organization. But as we increasingly move towards a product-centric mindset and a product-centric delivery model, those boundaries need to start blur again, right? We may still have portions of the team which are very delivery oriented, but some of those product managers, the way their role is looked at a more enterprise level, versus you are there to deliver to the stakeholder only, right? And your mandate is limited to the project requirements that you're getting. So some of that mindset shift, the accountability, the responsibility, right? And even the authority, if that's the right word to use, but it's like the you have to empower them, right? And that needs to break that barriers within different parts of that fragmented team, from a delivery and a buyer or a consumer mindset to kind of more partnership, right? And what that also means is kind of being very clear on the expectations. Especially a lot of product managers in the GIC organizations might still grow with the mindset that they'll be told what to do. If they have delivered a certain part of the task, then the job is done. So if you want them to behave differently, you have to train them differently. Uh, Again, Diana, you made a good point on hiring people with that vision, ability to connect the dots. Imagine that different realities. Uh, we already talked about the incentive and the metrics system as well. And the last point that we've seen from a collaboration perspective, something that really breaks down the model is even the work prioritization, right? In a lot of organizations, there is a goal, and as the teams are working towards the goal, there is always something else that comes up. And while that takes a good portion of certain time, and that happens, the next day the question is what happened to that original goal. So product teams also need more room because innovation
Right.
cannot happen at a day and time when you earmark it will happen. So some of that room, needs to be given to those teams, which is often a struggle when we are looking at distributed teams, very very targeted, work plans are not always successful. So yeah, allowing them to come together, operate more globally, and kind of having the right metrics, structure, and expectations is important.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Diana, for sharing your perspectives. And I know time flies into a conversation like this, and you're talking about product management and how do you kind of drive this. I do want to, let all our participants know that we do have, an opportunity for all of you to get access to some of our research in this space. So, get a taste of, our research in terms of product management, in terms of our we have role definitions, we have skills definitions, and we are kind of building the library around it. So do click the link in the chat and use it for your teams, and we'd be happy to chat more. If you have questions, also feel free to put those in the chat with us, and we would be happy to talk about. So as I start wrapping up here, I just wanted to ask Diana, Rohit, any last comments from both of your end, right? What would be your messages to uh, organizations that are on this journey to build and scale their product management teams? What would be your parting thought and message for them?
I'll
Rohit,
go
you want to go?
first.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Sure.
Diana.
Yeah, to those of you out there that are interested in getting into product management, uh, my word of advice is that again, there's no one path to product management, and just kind of inserting yourself where you can to be closer to the product and to start building the skills that you could represent on a resume, like requirements writing, becoming as more technical, and sitting closer to engineering. There's so many opportunities and people that are willing to give you that extra work, to be honest. For managers out there, like Rohit and I kind of talked about, is don't gate yourself. Look internally. There's talent that's waiting to be groomed and to join your product team, and that has industry experience, and start thinking about how you're fine tuning their skills when they already have that industry level experience. Yeah, product management, it's a self-guided tour.
Thank you, Anna. That's interesting. And we do getting some questions also in the chat, right? So one is around indicative metrics that will help drive a product-centric mindset, and also there's a bit on around the second one, which is around change in product team culture from being top down driven to being driven by individual PMs. I know both of these were topics. I know, Rohit, do you want to take the second one? I know you have a passion around this, and I know Diana also would have a thought around this. Is how do we drive this organization structure where it is not top down but it's bottom up, and you're giving individual accountability, ownership. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can start, and Diana, please add on to that. But again, I don't think it's an easy change, right? And to be honest, while it sounds very good, that okay, let's democratize it, let it be a bottom up culture. But the reality, if I particularly look at from a GBS model, is that a lot of the talent is not originally geared up for that kind of challenge. So picking the talent which has greater inclination, right? Because, and again, I saw another comment in there, so I'll link this to that, is that GBS represents a microcosm of the entire organization. So
Yeah.
all the teams that Diana was just listing that need to come together to collaborate in some capacity or the other, they are all already part of your GBS organization. So try and bring those teams together, right? Because even within the GBS, there are silos within which they operate. Bring them together. And I think bottom up sounds nice, but it needs to be most focused at the middle, right? So you start there, you start by creating some teams. And again, examples we have seen. For example, if this is a retail organization which launches a fair bit of products, which goes through a fair bit of high sales cycles, what is it that they need to do every time that happens, and can they bring teams together to kind of manage those events? So no, there is about every new product launch, every existing product will have those teams, but how do you bring existing teams together? How do you start with some wins, look back, and start developing your own playbook, if I may say, right? Based on what are the gaps that you have. Are you willing to experiment with people who have a vision, a knack for problem solving, or are very agile in their style of adapting to the situation? And then you train them on some of the other aspects, right?
Yeah.
Versus something else. So figure out your approach and kind of build on top of that. But also, you have to give them the permission, right? And I just forgot the exact term you used, but in a way, you said, you have to allow them to do it. So, both start at the middle, experiment in small pockets, and the global leaders have to allow them to do it. They have to give up some insecurities as well, right? When you bring others in into this loop.
Thank you, Rohit, for taking this up, and I agree, right? Because as you think of building, product teams and driving this ownership culture within the organization, everybody has to be centered around a central vision, right? So, if my central vision of a financial services firm is to create, embedded financial services experiences and create financial wellness as a goal, then how does the individual product team then take that goal and unpack it, right? So each pod based kind of building that pod based structure from an agile mindset, and then each pod unpacks the box for themselves and trying to understand what are the critical issues and how do you build around it becomes very very important. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And there was one question, that's the last one that we'll take today and then we'll wrap up, is what are the indicative metrics that will help a product centric mindset, right? So as you think about measuring organizations around this, what would be those? So I think I can start with, and Diana, Rohit, feel free to add to this. I believe from a product-centric mindset, the indicative metrics is largely going to be around objectives that you're defining for the end goal of the products. And what's important is, as we are trying to give more accountability and ownership to individual pods and teams who are driving this, they will define their own set of OKRs, as you know, Dan. I think you also mentioned this, to kind of measure their progress. One of the things is I'm seeing velocity to be a big element that is being driven as a metric. The other metric is, from a perspective, is cost, because in this environment you still want to manage that. And the third that we are seeing is the benefit to the customer and the experience that you're creating. So you're creating metrics around it. I think these are three that definitely happens. But as you start rolling this down, rolling this up together at an organization level and trying to create a product centric mindset, this is where it becomes exciting and interesting, is how do you then aggregate this as an organizational level velocity, organizational level customer experience, and then an organizational level cost efforts to do that. I think that will become important. And what we've also seen, and I don't think it's a metric but it's a design principle, is the organizations get more and more flatter as you move towards this mind. So I think that's another metric to look at as you're doing this transition. Diana, Rohit, any thoughts on this other than what I shared on metrics to drive a product centric mindset?
Yeah, I totally agree with just what you said, Ronak. And I guess building on that, I mean, like you called out, it always does need to come back to dollars and cents of what are my operating margins and how much return on investment this product is making me. But that's not where you should stop, because there's milestones that might not give you an immediate return that will propel you and the vitality of a product forward, and you might need to wait a year or 2 or 3 before you see that investment. So I think that like determining kind of like metrics around timelines and milestones that are directly tied to the product and its progress are a healthy thing, in addition to more monetary metrics. And then finally, it kind of just depends on how you're measuring the success of your product and your team. So like for the marketplace that I work on, it might be like the leads that are generated by listings and by the marketplace, which may or may not convert into opportunities, but that have a lot of traction, that give a lot of SEO power and presence to Ping's placement in Google and LinkedIn and other networks.
Oh, thanks, Diana. So I just wanted to say thank you, Diana, Rohit, for taking your time and doing this with us. This was an amazing discussion. I learned a lot, and I have a lot of questions and follow-up. So we would love to do more of this discussion, because I believe we're as an industry, and again, myself from an IT services analyst, I do see we are just getting started in building that product-based mindset in IT. But I think other organizations from an engineering product teams have strong head start. So how do we learn from that? And then Rohit, from your perspectives on how do we then embed it into the GBS model and drive this next evolution for the growth of the industry is going to be very exciting. So thank you, both of you, for taking your time and doing this with us. Really enjoyed the discussion today.
Thank you. It was great to share the panel with you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Rohit.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.